Sawadee Kham, and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. And you catch me laughing here a little bit when I do the intro because, well, today's episode, I'm not sure how mindful the communication has been in the topic that we're discussing. You've seen it. We're talking about the roast of Tom Brady. Why? Well, it's a buzz right now, right? Everyone's been talking about it since it came out a few days ago, live on Netflix, a live Netflix comedy special. So a comedy live event streamed live on Netflix. You can still watch it now, of course. They don't do that many live events just yet. So that was kind of interesting that they done one again. And yeah, it's a roast, like the return of the roast. We haven't seen like those hardcore roasts in a while. Maybe you've seen some roast battles on Comedy Central or whatnot, but like those big mainstream roasts, I think the last one was like 11 years ago, right? Donald Trump had this big one, but other than that, since then, not much has been roasted. Not many people have been hardcore roasted, so it was interesting to see this coming back. As a non-American, roasting is not in my culture, not in my genetics, if you will. I got exposed to it like decades ago when I started consuming more American media, so I'm used to it. I do understand that people from certain backgrounds, certain cultures might feel a bit different about it. Nevertheless, I think just talking about it is interesting right now, just to see like a few media theories actually, because that's what we do in this podcast, right? Analyzing why things are happening, how things are happening, and I think I can make a point as to make you understand why the roast happened now again, and why we might see more now happening, and yeah, maybe even why there weren't any of those roasts, because it used to be quite famous in the US, and then it died out a little, and now it's coming back slowly. So I think we can talk about this. And actually, before I analyze the actual roast, let's talk about it. That break of like 10, 11 years, right? Why? I think it's a cultural thing. It's like the political correctness wave was just so big, so popular. Cancel culture was running like through the US, in other countries too, but in the US like more so, I believe. And I think that's why lots of companies, maybe even comedians, but lots of companies, and let's be honest, the fun part at roasts is usually the non-comedians like going all comedian, right? You expect it from comedians to be like all funny and edgy and stuff, but then if like someone like Tom Brady or like his former teammates start roasting him, you're like, oh wow, they got lines. I mean, lines written for them, but still they can deliver them. And so I think that the past 10 years, people are just too scared, too aware of like, I don't want to end up getting shit stormed at. I don't want to be canceled, and that's why. No, I don't want to invest in like a roast if I'm Netflix, if I'm Hulu, if I'm whatever, right? HBO. So I think that's why we didn't see any roasts over the past decade or so. And now, slowly, I think the tide is turning again. Like, well, cancel culture is dying out more or less. Like, we see less of those cancel movements. People embrace sarcasm, irony, and so on more again. And so I think we see a shift slowly, and we see it also in US culture, US pop culture. And maybe a roast of the GOAT, debate to be debated, the white GOAT, as Bert Kreischer called him. Yeah, maybe that's like a turning point right now for mainstream streaming and /TV. Okay, so I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen roasts before, like in the past 10 years, 11 years. But I think with all of the success this one had now, because it seemed to be very successful, everyone's talking about it. I think we will see more of those. Good for Jeff Ross. So which theories did they use, right? Why was it such a success? I think the first theory we need to discuss, and we discussed it many a times on this podcast, but I just want to make it a point to really drive home that point that this theory is really important because it's what drives us, the audience. It's the uses and gratification theory. Okay, the use and gratification theory basically talks about the purpose of viewing in this case, right? So many viewers watch comedy roasts, comedy shows to satisfy certain needs, use and gratification. Okay, those needs could be entertainment, relaxation. Sometimes it's even some form of like catharsis, if you want. And the roast of Tom Brady, featuring like this super famous sports god, right, meets this need for humor while also addressing like this public curiosity about celebrities, about like his love life. Like, as you know, probably got divorced from Giselle Bündchen. Like all those things that have been made public, and that's what keeps us like invested, right? We're like, oh, what are people going to say about him and her and all the other Deflategate and things? What are people going to say about this? And so that use and gratification. Okay. Also, when we talk about social interaction, also like a big part of use and gratification, right? This event, I mean, I'm talking to you about it right now, right? Social interaction. This event like provides the material for social discourse, discussion. Like Twitter, X was a buzz with the roast of Tom Brady. Like every other podcast, this included, talks about the roast of Tom Brady. Like at work, especially in the US, I assume people talked about like how Tom Brady got roasted, how Tom Brady looked like, and whatnot. They talk about like shared jokes, their reactions, their personalities that came out. Like, did you see what X said about him? Did you see Kim Kardashian, what she said? You're like, what? Wow, huh? So that was just a crazy, crazy thing to put on, and it works. It satisfied our needs. And did it to like a great extent for like 3 hours plus or so. Another theory that we talk about a lot on this podcast, and it also fits very well here, is agenda setting. Right? We always talk about like that agenda setting. It utilizes things such as like framing theories to drive home the agenda, right? So how do I frame certain things? And the roast, of course, places Tom Brady like in a frame, right? In a specific light. So this frames him as like a good sport who can handle jokes at his expense. He's so cool, he's so funny. And then in the end, the last 10 minutes, he can come back and has some great lines and so on. And so this shapes the public perception of his persona, especially beyond the football field. Now that he's retired, right, it's important to shape his persona beyond the field. And this makes him look like a very, very chill, very fun, down to earth, like he can take the hits in this case. So it was a smart move by Tom Brady's PR team to say like, hey, let them roast you. Just sit there, 3 hours, smile. It's going to be good for your career. Yeah. So that's a framing part. Okay. And again, just to connect it to what we just said earlier, that also influences public discourse, of course, right? Because specific jokes and topics are elevated to like a talking point, to what the audience talks about after the event, such as in this case, of course, Brady's career, the controversies, Deflategate, for example, his personal life, Giselle Bündchen, and so on. They are now central themes on social media and on the discussions on social media after the roast is done. Okay, so that's a very smart move again. And I'll stick to like those mainstream theories for now, just because I think that the roast provides like such a nice, I don't know, coherent timeline frame of reference for us to like see how those theories are at work. So, for example, another one, the cultivation theory that we discussed many a times also on the podcast, right? The cultivation theory. I think in this case, it shows that like stereotypes and humor can be cultivated. And what I mean by that is like comedy, like roasts often, they rely on like stereotypes, right? You stereotype someone to get something funny out of it. And this can reinforce certain beliefs or certain ideas over time. In Tom Brady's case, like stereotypes about athletes, aging stars, those controversies again, Deflategate and so on, might be like humorously exaggerated. And this could then possibly also influence the audience perception. And to be fair, it wasn't only Tom Brady getting roasted, right? Everybody would get it. Like Gronkowski got like all the banter in the world about him not being the smartest person in the room and so on. Everybody made fun of Kevin Hart. It was hilarious, but like Tom Brady was the central figure, so that's why I just used the Tom Brady examples right now. But everybody in attendance basically would get it. This then also leads to like cultural norms being influenced by that, I believe, by the cultivation theory. So because the roasts have been in a long time back then like a significant cultural phenomenon, now it's coming back and people who used it like, yeah, it's back. And people who are now exposed to it are like, wow, that's really impactful. So it has some cultural impact, right? We can discuss how much of a cultural impact it has. It used to have a lot. Let's see if it can go back to the old times. But it's nice that it was normal to poke fun at celebrities, and now maybe we're reaching that point again. Yeah. And so this roast of Tom Brady and everybody else in attendance just reinforced this norm that it's okay to poke at celebrities, because I mean, in the end, they're making money off being celebrities, so it's okay to poke them once in a while if they agree to it, right? And it also highlights, though, the limits of like what's acceptable in comic discourse, and that relates to what I said in the beginning of the podcast, that it seems to be there's more acceptable again in the comedic discourse, less, oh my God, the cancellation screams, and less PC like finger pointing, I think, which is great. The only one who got some ohs, which was hilarious, was Tony Hinchcliffe, my favorite of the whole event. I had there were a few duds in there. One very famous one that you probably all heard of, but also a few others that weren't that great. Lots of funny stuff. I was a bit disappointed by Andrew Schulz. They were pretty basic, and I'm gonna have to. I'm already sorry, because I know we have if I take it off my head, we have a similar haircut by now, Andrew Schulz, because my head was effed up. But it's like the formula is not too easy to see with Andrew Schulz, I believe. Like it's like this, like throw out a singer, and then go like, before the audience can react, it's like, hey guys, and then while he's like guys, he expects the audience to be like, ha, so funny. Not to say that he's never funny, but it's just that formula is like a bit repetitive by now. But nevertheless, like Tony Hinchcliffe was amazing. Tony Hinchcliffe, like to quote or to steal this from Joe Rogan, murdered. He murdered hearts. Tony is such a beast. I could do a Joe Rogan episode. Tony Hinchcliffe was, because it was smart, but it was also very edgy, like very fine, like blurring the lines is what I'm trying to say. Like he blurred the lines and maybe overstepped once or twice, but that's what you want to see from a comedian. And he was like very, very secure, and like also his delivery. From most people, you could see that they were reading from a prompter, but Tony was like walking while he was talking, so it looked like very, very like safe. You couldn't tell that he was reading from the prompter. And that was pretty cool. He saved his buddies a little bit, like he made like one or two throwaway references to like Bert Kreischer and Andrew Schulz, but it wasn't too bad because they're all buddies, of course, but the rest was on point. So that was pretty cool. And to see that apparently this goes again. So great. I love it. So maybe we're cultivating this sense of humor again, which is fantastic. The last two that I wanted to mention is like the reception theory is one of those, because, and we talked about reception before, but I want to add like a new wrinkle to it. So if you listen to the podcast before, you're like, oh yeah, I know perception theory. I hope so. Even if not, I'm going to explain now, but I want to add like a little wrinkle to it, which we call in media theory, polysemy. Okay, that's like the little wrinkle. Let me explain. So this means that different audiences, they're gonna interpret, not a native speaker, interpret the roast differently. Okay? So diehard Tom Brady fans, if there are, I think there are, they say it like as a playful, like camaraderie, if you will, while others, they might view it as like something justifiable criticism of Tom Brady. Like finally, they talk about like Deflategate and like his marriage going down the drain and stuff like this. So you have the hardcore fans are like, yeah, it's so cool that he takes us on the chin. And others are like, yeah, finally people tell him to his face, even if it's in a funny way, but finally, yeah, exactly. People take the piss. And this variability, shows how media content can be, very important, can be decoded uniquely by diverse viewers. If you're a media student or if you're working in the media, you know that. For others, like, let me quickly explain. So what's very important when it comes to media creation, but also media consumption, is in the very basic model you learn like in your first semester, if you study this is like a decoding, encoding model. There are different ones out there from different researchers, but like encoding and decoding, that means like, imagine you have like person A sending the message and person B receiving the message, right? The thing is, as you know from real life, if A says something, B might not understand it the way that A intended it to be, right? And now, why is that the case? There's like several reasons, right? So in between like A and B, it's not like a direct line, like, hey, let me tell you what I feel, and here, take it, and then, oh yeah, I understand what you mean. There are different forces impacting the way B understands what A is saying, right? This could be like the channel that you're using to send it, for example, the message. So if I send you a message on like a messenger, for example, it seems less serious than in an email, or less serious than in maybe like a call or a letter. To get a letter from your employer, from your university, like, oh my God, why did I get a letter? That must be serious. Oh my God, what did I do? To get a text message, you're like, yeah, whatever. Even though the content could be the same, right? That's like what Marshall McLuhan said, for example, with the medium is the message. So the channel that I use to send the message on impacts how I understand the message, right? But it's not the only thing. It's also like your surrounding. How are you growing up, right? So if I'm like in like an ivory tower, for example, I will understand messages differently to if I grew up in the suburbs or like in the ghetto, or like, no offense, like in Bangkok we have those too, right? So if I grew up like in like poorer circumstances, for example, if I grew up witnessing violence compared to never witnessing anything rough in the streets, for example, so then I understand messages being sent completely differently. Maybe I understand it something as a joke, while if I grew up like without parents, I understand things like as like a threat. I'm like, hey, did you just threaten me? And it's, no, I was joking, man. I was joking. Yeah, you really? It's not funny, right? So different impact factors influence the way we understand messages. And so here too, right? How an audience understands the roast, for example. Like, yeah, he's funny. He's my guy. So cool. Hey, I love Tom Brady. Or like, yeah, that SOB, he deserves it. Like, F Tom Brady, for example, right? So that's like the reception theory. And that leads us to what we call negotiated readings. Okay? So, yeah, while some viewers might enjoy the humor, but still feel maybe uncomfortable with some of those edgy jokes that cross like maybe personal boundaries. This could then lead to mixed receptions, right? So some think it's hilarious how Kevin Hart always like talks and then he turns to the right of his and he's like, fuck you, Tom Brady. Now I said the F word on my podcast, I'm demonetized. Well, too late. So he would just talk about stuff and he's like, F you, Tom Brady, and then he would just continue talking. So this was kind of funny in the moment, but maybe it crossed some personal boundaries because it was the effort, for example. Okay, so that's an example of negotiated reading. Okay, the last theory I'm going to talk about today, my favorite theory if you follow the podcast, postmodern theory, because postmodern simply includes almost everything that we see in modern day media. One of those things that is like an integral part of postmodern theory is the blurring of reality and what we call in postmodern theory, hyper-reality. Yeah, we talked about this on the podcast before. Reality, what you see is what you get. Hyper-reality is like this negotiated, this mediated reality, the reality that you see on the screen, on Instagram, on social media, but that you then take as reality. Even though we know it's not, it's fake, it's staged, but it's the only exposure we have to the celebrity, the person we follow, whatever, the person you're stalking. It's the only reference point. So that's what makes it real for us. And then it becomes hyper-reality. Okay. So and hyper-reality is always, of course, like exaggerated nature of like real life. We never just post mundane things. We only post like cool, awesome things, right? And this now exaggerated nature of the roast as well plays with the idea of like hyper-reality, like where jokes are, of course, grounded in truth, right? But also exaggerated to like the point of fiction, of course, to make it more funny. And that's what comedians do. So this hyperbolic commentary around Tom Brady in this case and all the others on stage may like blur the line between his real persona, Tom Brady, and that caricature like that you create on stage, like this bigger than life Tom Brady thing, right? Who said it? I think it was Tony Hinchcliffe who said like, Tom Brady, why do you look like a gay Tom Brady? So like blurring the lines of like all those cliches, stereotypes, those gossips that are out there, right? And postmodernism also very, very heavily relies on intertextuality. That means references. So my text, so everything we create in the media is called a text. It could be written, it could be video, music, podcast, everything we call text. Okay, so intertextuality means I reference other texts within my text. Prime example right now, Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And I'm not making a video on this because two grown-up rappers beefing. Okay, I hate those air quotes. So if you watch the video, I just did 2 air quotes. But two grown-up rappers, multi-billionaires, millionaires, whatever, beefing. Oh, and the whole internet talking about it, like, get a life, people. So I'm not making a video on that, seriously. But they're referencing each other all the time. That's intertextuality, right? Lots of media right now is intertextual. Lots of videos, lots of shows on Netflix are intertextual, like Cobra Kai, for example. Of course, lots of Karate Kid references because like the continuation of Karate Kid, for example. And lots of those shows like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragons, intertextuality. But also like sometimes you see like a Family Guy cameo within The Simpsons, for example, or vice versa, for example. That's also intertextuality. So it could be in songs, in movies, in shows, books. I mean, I work at a university, so if I write content and I reference other content, that's also kind of intertextuality. Actually, if you write an academic paper, it could also be kind of intertextuality. Think about it. So that's intertextuality, okay? And so in the roast, those jokes, they might refer to Tom Brady's on-field achievements, his personal relationships, cultural impact, and so on. And they create like this layered commentary that assumes some knowledge of like those intertextual references. Like people know his football achievements, they know his personal struggles, and so on. Okay, so that's like intertextuality. Okay, so I think that's enough of like teaching content. It's been 20 minutes already, but I just found this like while I was watching the roast of Tom Brady, now on Netflix, not affiliated, but check it out. 3 hours though, it's quite long. While I was watching it, I was like, I can see all those theories at play right now. So I have to talk to you guys about it because I just found it awesomely laid out, if you will. To wrap things up once more, I think it's interesting to see like how comedy is coming back around now, how people are getting less and less offended again, which I find interesting from a also sociological point of view. Does that also mean I can make more jokes at university again? I will try and I will let you know. But overall, it was kind of a funny show. It was, like I said, some duds in there, but 3 hours is a long time to fill. I think Tony Hinchcliffe was hilarious. He blurred the lines very well. I think Kevin Hart was very funny too. Sometimes he's a bit like too family, but in this case, he was pretty funny and like also edgy at times, which was appreciated. Some of the guests were cool. Gronkowski was Gronkowski, which was also hilarious. The only thing that was really disappointing, besides the one thing that I'm not going to talk about because it's all over social media and it was very obvious. The other thing that disappointed were like, what's like Bert Kreischer and what's the other dude, Tom Segura. They're just not funny anymore. It was very disappointing. And you can see both of them just staring at the prompter and just reading what's on the prompter, and then they were presenting at the same time. And they had like a TV behind them. It's like a university presentation with like pictures, funny pictures, but pictures like popping up, and you're like, am I seeing a PowerPoint presentation right now? And then Bert was like, hey, da da da, and then Tom was like, oh yeah, and then Bert's like, oh yeah, by the way. And it was like this back and forth, like in a school university presentation. I felt really uncomfortable watching that. So this was not funny. The rest was very interesting. So if you haven't, check it out. Let me know what you think about the roast of Tom Brady. Did you think Tom Brady handled it well? By the way, at the end, the last 10 minutes where he had like a chance to defend himself and then roast everybody back was kind of some nice lines, and he delivered them well. So let me know what you think. Did you like the roast of Tom Brady? Until then? Until when? Soon. I already have the next podcast lined up because I want to talk about something else, and that's like close to my heart. So that's going to come soon in a few days. Until then, stay safe, take care, like, share, subscribe. Otherwise, I'm going to roast you. all the best. Enjoy the weekend, and we talk soon. สวัสดีครับ